What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty P here. Another episode of Steelers Warm, bringing to you a new show. That's right, we're going to have a new show starting on the channel from now. It is the Steelers Global Perspective. Mike Tomlin likes to use this phrase when he's talking about looking at things at like a macro level, at a wider level, at a bigger level, at an overview. And obviously, it's the Steelers touchdown under. So from our perspective, it's Australian, but the global perspective, that can't be one country. The Steelers are US-based. That's where the NFL is. And so I am excited to bring to the show, to launch this new show on the channel, Shannon White. We know him well. We know him very well. A lot of you know him well. I've had him on the show a couple of times. It's something that he and I have been talking about for a while. Finally been able to tee it up this week. Finally been able to tee it up after some things have been going on a personal level. But Shannon, welcome to the channel. Welcome everyone to this show. Excited to have you on. So cool. What's that? We've still got you there. There we go. There you go. Are you back?
I'm back.
Yeah, there we go.
Did we lose picture or just sound?
Pardon?
Did we lose picture or just sound?
No. My headset unplugged with the with the good old Yeti. But yeah, let's get into it. So I think it's been weird because I think the last time we spoke was the week before we went into the season. I think that was the last time we spoke, or very early in the season. And so I feel like in amongst the Steelers community and everything we've seen on TV as well, in terms of how the team have performed, what we're hearing in the Steelers community, what you're seeing on Steelers Twitter, it's kind of an interesting time for you and I to kick off this, because if I asked you how you were feeling on the season, I've been watching your shows on Steel Curtain Network, formerly BTSC, where that's how we came to meet each other. It's probably a lot of doom and gloom. And then I think there's a lot of the community out there that when it comes to Steelers, that after last week against the Bengals, some people have literally gone from one side of the odometer or the Richter scale to the complete other side. Some people are still like, there's so much work to still be done. As I say, I've been tracking what you've had to say and like a lot of the different challenges this team have had. Stranger Things, which you've got on your t-shirt, is probably could be the theme of the season for the Steelers. Strange in how the offense was moved around, strange in the running back situation, strange with some of the selections at O-line where they never started Broderick Jones to kick off the season, which you and I were both for. Strange in that you have 3 starting linebackers and inside linebacker, which the Steelers haven't had before, and then 2 of them go down in 2 weeks. All really strange things. So how are you feeling now after the Bengals game? And then it might be worth us rewinding and sort of how you've been trending through the season on a number of areas. But yeah, how are you feeling after the game against the Bengals? Because so many positives, but still so much to work on.
Yeah, before the game, we was talking about stranger things. A team, the first 10 games of the season, they're outgained in every game. That's never happened, and much less having a winning record at the time of 6-4. But my opinion was I felt like Matt Canada was holding the offense back all along, and I've been saying this for over a year. So everything changed the moment that they went out of character, totally out of the norm for the Steelers franchise. And they finally cut ties with Matt Canada. I said before the game, in the article, Random Observations, that all they needed to do was the things that Canada refused to do. I mean, really, they use the middle of the field. You have 2 good NFL caliber wide receivers, but that's all. And neither Deontay Johnson or George Pickens has maturity or consistency. Yep. But where you have a surplus of talent is at running back and at tight end. So it was the perfect opportunity to get Pat Freiermuth back into the offense and have Washington and Connor Hayward work in there more, and you utilize both Harris and Warren. And we've seen that they did all of those things. They used the middle of the field. They used the seams, and it opened up everything. I'd been trying to explain to people that Kenny Pickett was part of the problem, but he was in by no means the whole problem.
Yeah.
And once you've seen a offense willing to utilize the whole field at all three levels, then you've seen Kenny Pickett play a complete game. You know, he'd had a good quarter here, usually a fourth quarter, but we had not seen a complete game. But we did on Sunday against the Bengals. And one of the things people need to realize is they worked the middle of the field a lot, more than they had in all the other games combined, against the Bengals team that is not a great defense. But they have Pratt and Wilson at inside linebacker, and both of those guys are top-tier inside linebackers and excellent coverage. And they attacked them repeatedly. So it wasn't like they went up against, you know, one of the bottom three defenses as far as the interior linebackers in the league. They went up against a good set, and they really took advantage of them throughout the game. So my opinion now is anything that happened in the first 10 games, I'm not as concerned about, because I think we're going to see the real capabilities of this offense now. We're going to see the real Kenny Pickett. And I think that the offense is going to be able to actually assist the defense and help the defense with time of possession, a better third down conversion percentage, and by putting more points on the scoreboard.
Yeah, and it's one thing that I've been saying, and I think exactly you've been right. I mean, you're right on loads of things. I think that's why we get on, maybe. But I think in the shows that I've listened to you and the stock reports and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff around Kenny Pickett is like, it's not necessarily he's not the guy, but he's not playing well. He's not seeing this. He's not seeing that. And I think a lot of that comes down to how the Steelers, you know, how he's been coached, the system that Canada's had in. I mean, I don't know if you caught the football. Probably a lot of people in the live chat or that listen to this on replay may have caught Ben's comments where he says Canada didn't really want to work directly with him. Like it was only solely like, you know, through the quarterback's coach, which in that last year was Sully as well. And I think, you know, that's a whole interesting piece that, you know, people could go into. I think you don't even need to go into it. Everyone knows what that looked like from a film perspective. But something that I've been saying from the get-go, which is why I wanted the Steelers to draft Kenny Pickett, particularly over Malik Willis, apart from all the concerns I had on Malik Willis, was Kenny in college was very successful, particularly in his last year, throwing down the center of the field. Like he had PFF grades, regardless of whether people think they're great or they're not. If you've got a high one, obviously you're going to be performing better, regardless of whether you care about how the grade's produced. He had grades in like deep in the center of the field, you know, at like 97.5 on PFF, 93.6 intermediate. So obviously, you know, 10 to 20 yards. Short center, he had it like 0 to 10 yards out from line of scrimmage. It was like 81.7. Like he had very high passing grades. I'm talking things like where he completed deep 26 from 38 in his final year in college for 14 TDs and 2 interceptions. Like the kid can throw it. If there's guys in space there and they're schemed open and he can read the play, he can throw it there, right? So I think that's the interesting element. It's funny. It's kind of like, it's not necessarily Matt Canada. I mean, obviously, he would never have got a job in the NFL if he couldn't put together a playbook. It just seems that he couldn't call his own plays in the right order. Like that's the interesting thing, because the fluidity of what we saw from Sully in the way those plays were called. Ben talked about it. We haven't seen this many men introduced into the offense so early in the game. Like they tried to spread the football, and I think that's huge. I think the use of an actual tight end. Oh, yeah, go.
I don't know if you've seen, in the last couple of days, we've seen Jaylen Warren be interviewed, and we've seen Calvin Austin be interviewed. And they talked about the game planning and the open dialogue between Faulkner and Sullivan. And if you watched on the sidelines, you've seen Faulkner talking to Harris, talking to Pickett, talking to one of the receivers. I mean, there was so much back and forth in communication. They said, Austin said for the first time, the why, when, and where was actually discussed. Like, if we get in this down the distance, we're going to do one of these plays, and why we're doing that, and what we're expecting. It was sequencing of play calling is very important. Being able to build off one call and then utilize that, what you learned from that, whether it was successful or not, and then devising another call to take advantage of the defense guessing, or, before it was so predictable. That sequencing of play calling is very important. That was a huge weakness for Matt Canada. So we're hearing reports from guys like Austin and guys like Warren that are really clearly telling the problem, and you don't even have to read between the lines to figure it out.
Well, I mean, this is why, bring a wider context, this is why democracies and, the militaries of the West tend to do pretty well, because you don't have someone sitting in an ivory tower that makes all the decisions and doesn't actually hear the insights from what's going on. And the players on the field having that insight. I mean, and literally with Canada, we had him in his ivory tower. He sat up there in the box away from everything, right? It literally, that's what it was. So
and his body language, when he come down to the field, it was like, I don't know, I just got it was like a sulking, a pounding, not a lot of communication. Like I said, that very first game last week, you see Faulkner and Sullivan and their interaction with each other and the players, and they were really engaged, and it makes a difference. It's there was a chemistry, and as you said, an important word, fluidity. Yes. To the offense that had not been there.
Yeah, it's really, really. It's interesting. It almost makes me lost for words in the fact that you'd think in the NFL that fluidity would be just a given, yet we're taking it as such an important thing. But as you shook your head there, it's not. A lot of teams struggle with this. A lot of teams struggle with. And where I think a lot of teams struggle with fluidity, which is where as a Steelers fan base, we might not be as used to it. Number one is we've had some star years. We had a Hall of Fame first ballot quarterback. That changes it because he's given freedom on the field. He can see things. He can be fluid in the passing plays and the audibles and all those things. Why Peyton Manning was so successful was fluidity. He's famous for the audibles that he would cause. When Tom Brady, fluidity in that you didn't know which guy was going to pass it too short or out of the backfield. On all the, this diamond dunk, that's very hard to protect against. Now, you've got to be really successful at it to be able to score a lot of points. And Brady was, obviously. Other teams, it's less successful. But for Steelers fans, fluidity on defense is something that I think a lot of teams struggle with. For the Steelers, I think it's something that we're very good at. And I think that's been a big thing that, I've seen in our offense. It's the reason why this team are doing so well despite missing their best defensive player. I mean, we all think it's TJ, but I know you've talked about it, like Minka. I mean, that's the thing that's inspiring me as we go down the stretch. We don't even have Minka Fitzpatrick playing right now.
But he's back this week.
It looks to be so. It looks to be so. So in that case in mind, and particularly with view back to the linebacker situation, how do you think that's evolving? I want to get your opinion on that because I feel like that the offense has sort of hogged the limelight so much of the Steelers' narrative. But how do you feel that inside linebacker position is going? I mean, I know it's a big deal with Neal still out injured because you can't bring him into the box. But obviously, we've got Quay Walker there. It was a really high view video on our channel when I talked about him joining, coming off the practice squad. Obviously, they've got Miles Jack kind of back in the mix. You've got Blake Martinez there. Or Martinez there. You've got Landon Roberts. How are you feeling about that inside linebacker core going down the stretch?
Well, as you know, the last couple of years, I've been utterly disgusted with the inside linebacker position. The Steelers have set a standard on defense at multiple positions. But when you look at the Steelers' inside linebackers down throughout their history, it is a physical, hard-nosed, team-first attacking standard that has been set. And I've grown up watching that my whole life. And starting with Devin Bush and the parade of guys they brought in after Ryan Shazier's injury, it was not living up to the standard in any way. And this year they went out and they brought in Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts.
Yeah.
They revamped the whole group and kept Mark Robertson, who they still don't play. But they brought in 2 quality starters with experience. They brought in Quan Alexander, who was a great signing towards the end of camp. And I've been so pleased with the physicality, the attacking nature. They're not absorbing the action. They're attacking. They're imposing. Yeah. And I was so happy. And then to lose Holcomb and Alexander in back-to-back games, it was devastating. And then Landon Roberts has, picked his play up to another level. Yeah. And the fact he's leading the NFL in run stop percentage. And when he's tackling guys, Matty, it's like a sudden stop. It ain't like he grabs a hold and rides them a little bit. When he hits them, they're stopped.
I feel like he actually puts his shoulder into a tackle.
He's so physical without getting penalized. You can't do it if you form tackle.
Yep.
And he is a great form tackler. But I was like, oh, man, what are they going to do? Because you can't have Roberts and Robertson in there at the same time because they're kind of the same player. Well, they picked up Michael Walker.
Oh, yeah, Michael Walker. I said Quay
Walker. I'm like, I watched him in Atlanta, and I know he's very athletic, but I didn't know how he was going to fit in. Well, he's fit in excellent because he's replacing Holcomb and Alexander's mobility and athleticism. He's excellent at coverage. He's been a sure tackler. And if you watch him, he's communicating. He's verbally hollering out and pointing guys and telling them to get here. He's doing, and he's just got with the team.
Well, and the interesting thing about what you say there is that, people kept saying, oh, he had 104 tackles. How could he not be with Atlanta, right? And when I covered him joining the Pittsburgh Steelers, I sort of said one of the interesting things that I felt was that his coverage stats weren't that good. Like last year, I think he had allowed 83% catch percentage. It's always been in the 70%. Now, obviously, that depends on how a linebacker is targeted, of course. But that was one of the areas where I was like, well, I can see the benefit because he's a very quick linebacker that will help you with move around really fast all over the field and be really versatile and get to the edge and all those sorts of things. But I was worried about the coverage. So I have pleasantly been surprised as well about that coverage. Like I sort of thought, hey, when Neal comes back, it will work. But until then, I think it looks. I think I said when we talked about him joining the squad, I was like, I think it might be a bit suspect. Well, hey, like he's actually turned up and he is doing the coverage stuff. It's awesome.
I want to explain one thing that statistics you have to watch because they can be misleading.
Correct.
Like if you look at the Steelers cornerbacks, they, before Joey Porter Jr., they asked everybody to play 5-6 yards off.
Yep.
And the Steelers, if it's 3rd and 10, they'll give you a 6-yard completion and they want you to tackle the catch immediately.
Yeah.
So you get off the field, right? But if you look, guys in the past, Joe Hayden did that to perfection. But if you looked at the completion percentage against, he was one of the worst in the league.
True.
Because what they were asking him to do. His responsibility was not to deny, it was to tackle the catch.
Yeah.
And in Atlanta's defense, they asked Walker to use his speed to run down and make tackles all over the field.
Yeah.
And to tackle the ball. They was asking him to cover a guy that wasn't really his cover, but he ended up being his guy because he used his athleticism to get out there. So I was the same as you. If I just looked at the statistics, I'd be like, he's not that good in coverage. But as we see in the Steelers defense, he's above average.
And what I really like is that when you do get Neal back, this creates a And I think to me, he looks a little bit even quicker than what Quan is, right? So to me, I'm like, you get Neal
He's younger.
back. Yeah, that helps, right? That helps.
Yep.
But I sort of think, and I think he's a little bit more, he's got more of a sprinter's body. He's not, I don't think he looks as rangy. To me, he doesn't look as rangy as Quan. I think they're only an inch tall difference, but whatever. But
it is a different physique, yes.
Yeah, it definitely is. And so what I like though is that when Neal comes back, this is going to be really helpful in how they play sub package down the stretch, and that's going to be really key against some of these teams that want to have to throw the football. It's really important when you get into the playoffs and you are looking at how you are not just what scheme and what plays you're going to run, but also what are those man-on-man matchups that you're going to have as well. So to me, that's one of the really exciting things, because that was one of the things that worried me when Holcomb and Quan went down, because Holcomb, I thought from the moment he joined, he was a lot more agile than what a lot of people out there thought, right?
Yeah.
Like to me, he's like a bit more of a short and stockier Chad Muma, who we both really liked in the draft a couple of years back, right? Like that's the way he looks over the field. I mean, I love, you see these photos. Sometimes the Steelers, when they go to away games, put up the travel photos. And all the time I saw him in the preseason, he's got these cut T-shirts and these massive biceps for days. I'm like, we have a linebacker that looks like a linebacker for once.
Yeah.
Right? So
I got the mullet. He's got
the
blowing mullet. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's something there. Oh, I love it. So you and I, but you were probably even a bigger proponent of it, were for Broderick Jones getting into the lineup sooner rather than later to kick off the season. How vindicated do you feel now that he's in there regularly and the run game's improved, his side of the field's improved, things are working?
Well, I'm going to start out with saying I don't like to say I told you so.
Oh, you can on this. Just say it away.
but you said vilified. When it comes to, I wanted to have the hangover title on Monday be Shannon was right all along when we were talking about Mad Canada, but we resisted the urge to do that. With Broderick Jones, like me and you talked on our last show, you've got a first round guy that you moved up to take, who is more athletically gifted than any offensive lineman you've ever selected in the history of the franchise.
Yeah, big.
This to me, regardless of how it's looking like it could be a playoff season.
Yep.
But it's still a rebuilding season, because the Steelers' goal is to get to a Super Bowl now and win a Super Bowl, not just get there. They got to figure out what they have in Kenny Pickett. That was priority number one to start this season. We wasted 10 games. But now we're going to see, to close out this season and hopefully a playoff appearance, what they have in Kenny Pickett. Because the intangibles are all there. The clutch, the leadership, the work ethic, all that is there. Athleticism is okay. He's not going to be doing the miraculous, things that's going to show up on SportsCenter athletically, but he is good enough. If he can process, if he can learn to, we're saying he couldn't process, he wasn't willing to take chances throwing down the middle. Well, we've seen all that go away in 1 week. So where we go from here will matter. But in the process, this year was about player development and personnel usage. So you want to start guys that are going to be the foundation of your franchise for the next 3 to 4 years. You want to start them immediately.
Agree.
But I said, okay, we'll give him a few weeks to get his feet wet and not throw him out there. But then Dan Moore and Chooks Okorafor are stinking it up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, right from the get-go. And Dan Moore, it just kept getting worse by the week.
Yeah.
And so they took an injury to get Broderick Jones in there, and I was about losing it.
Me too. I just couldn't understand that. I couldn't.
If you watch Broderick Jones, like on Sunday, he was going up against Sam Hubbard. Now, Sam Hubbard's coming back from an injury, so, he wasn't 100%. But Jones toyed with him.
Yeah.
He would block him one-on-one. Hubbard had no chance of getting around him. When he pulls down the line, he moves like a tight end.
Yeah.
He hits smaller targets in space, like a cornerback, with ease. Most big guys miss him. They go under him. But not him. He is so athletic. He is so gifted. He's so strong. All it is experience, is a technique. And he's going to be an all-pro. I'm telling you.
Well, and the two things that I think fly under the radar a little bit with him are he's 6'4". He's not like a 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" guy, but there are some tackles out there. But you talk about the athleticism. At 3, I think he's about 323 pound, right? Like, I mean, it's hard because you see numbers on a sheet. It fluctuates. We all of us have weight that fluctuates, right? Let's say he's 320 pound, right? He, to me, though, when you look at him, he is very lean. Like, there's a lean muscle there, right? For an offensive lineman. And that's why he's able to be athletic, because pound for pound, I would love to get the workout sheet for what he, all these lifts and pulls are in terms of the Steelers weight room, because I think people would be genuinely surprised, even though he's an offensive lineman, because to me, he looks like he's got a lot of lean muscle, even for that position. So that's number one. Number two, they interviewed him a couple of weeks back when he was named as the starter. I want, the Steelers media and the Steelers beat writers, and they said to him, "Are you finding this different? How hard is it to work yourself in the lineup?" All those sorts of questions. And he goes, "I hate to harp on about the past, but I played at Georgia. We played him. We practiced in pads all the time. We were like number one, and then in college football, and talk about that." And I'm like, a lot of people would say that's arrogant. I didn't think that came across arrogant at all. To me, it's like he's like, I'm locked in. I know what it's like to be locked in. That's in my nature. Obviously, he didn't say it directly, but we know that he played about 20-ish games of college coming in. He'd only played his senior year in high school. So coming into the NFL, maybe a bit less experienced than other people. But he's a gun. He's used to professionalism. He's an awesome player. And no, I agree with you. This guy, put aside the whole Pro Bowl crap, I do think I agree with you. I think he is going to be a top 10 tackle in this league in the next couple of years, because it's all there if he wants it. Yeah.
I say top 5. You mentioned his height. 6'4" is good for, being able to hit the smaller targets, and also for anchoring a lot of times. But he's got the wingspan of a 7 foot.
It's nuts.
So that's the perfect union. He can reach guys that can't reach him.
Yeah.
With that wingspan. But he still moves around like an athletic tight end. So I've just been super impressed with him. You know what he said? I didn't take that as arrogance. I took that as just being honest. And there's a difference. If you say it, you're being honest, and you can back it up. I don't call that arrogance.
Me neither. That's called spitting facts.
Yeah.
I had a question for you, actually, in the last game. I was watching some tape from one of the quarterback school channels that is on YouTube. JT Sullivan. Anyway,
JT Sullivan.
Yeah. He was saying he was reading some tape, and he talked about obviously the Deontay fumble. You and I will get there because I think very similar on it. But he talked about he picked on Seumalo a little bit in this game against the Bengals. Now, I don't think when I was watching the game, I noticed Seumalo being a deep problem. Did he have a suspect game though? Because when he was doing that tape review, he was questioning a lot of what Seumalo was doing.
To me, Dan Moore struggled mightily.
Yeah.
And Mason Cole had his best game in a couple of weeks, but he's really struggled.
And that's not saying much.
No, he struggled this year. So who's between them?
Yeah.
Seumalo.
Yeah.
What we got to remember is an offensive line is got to be a cohesive unit.
Yeah, that's what
it's like having all 5 of your fingers and one of them's broke. You got to compensate.
Yeah.
Well, Seumalo is in there trained. Last year he had Kelsey, arguably the best center in the NFC. And then he had, I can't remember who he had next to him at tackle.
Mailata. Jordan
Okay,
Mailata. But
he was in a really secure place. And he had basically an all-pro season, even though he wasn't all-pro. He comes to Pittsburgh, he's not surrounded by those guys. He's got Mason Cole, who struggled, and he's got Dan Moore, who really shouldn't be in there. So I thought Samalu's game has improved, but there was some communication breakdown, and he did allow some pressure. But again, without knowing for sure, I don't know if it was Cole's mistake.
Yeah.
Was it his mistake?
Yeah.
Now,
to me, it looked a
Daniels
little bit
played
like some of the
another-
Coles on the run plays when he was calling it out. I was like, oh, if assuming Samalu has done exactly what he should have or made the best of the bad situations, a lot of it was more when the running back was more running between the A and the B gap, and it looked more like Cole probably wasn't doing what he should have been doing. But that's just my observation when I was watching him analyze.
I think he's had to try to make the best of a bad situation a lot this year.
Yeah.
And I thought him and Daniels has been solid again this year, having an excellent
You reckon?
season.
I thought he had a very average start to the season through the first 5 games. I think there were times when Daniels, it wasn't that he had a bad game overall, but there were some games where he'd have a bad quarter for me. But again, you wonder whether how much of that was Cole. But there was just a couple of the start of the Texans game. I thought, man, you got to play better than that. There are just a few games where I was like, geez, that can't be what you better not play like that for the whole game. I just feel like I've felt that at least through three to 5 games this year.
He's been with the Steelers for, at the end of this year, 2 years, and he's still not officially give up a sack.
True.
In the last 4 games, he's given up 1 pressure.
Yeah.
Fair. He's really stepped up. And then, of course, Broderick Jones, you can put him on left side, right side, it don't matter. He's going to get the job done.
But he'll be starting left tackle next year, right? Like that's
got to be.
Yeah.
He's got to be.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to figure out, are they going to try to draft a right tackle or because all we hear Tomlin say is that Dan Moore is terrible on the right side. So, to me, that's saying they got to get a right tackle.
Do you think that they will move Dan Moore inside? Because that's where I thought he was going to play in the NFL, to be honest.
Well, that would take care of his mobility issues. But Samalu, they got him for another year at least.
Yep.
And Daniels as well. So where are you going to put him? Unless you try to move Daniels to center. I would rather personally the Steelers look at a guy like Zach Frazier from WVU.
Yep.
And he might not be ready to begin the year because he got hurt their last game. But listen, this guy's got it all. Yep. You know what I said about Creed Humphrey?
Yep.
And there hasn't been another guy since then that I've been that crazy about. But that's how I feel about Zach Frazier.
Yeah, right. I'll have to do a bit more of a deep dive into him. Yeah, I think center's got to be very high on that list. It's very high. A lot of time it doesn't make sense to get a center in that first round unless you're looking at the 5th-year options. So
no, you want to look at a second or a third usually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also I'm going to start as we start getting deeper into the season on the channel. I'm going to do a bit more about, top free agents and all of that sort of thing. But, there's plenty of time for teams to still re-sign guys. We had a few questions in the live chat and I like to make sure that we cover those. Toddy says, he asked a really, really great question in terms of, do we see 1,000 yards for Najee and Jalen, both of them, fact or fiction? We've obviously got 6 games left starting this week. Do you think both guys can crack the 1,000 mark? Yeah, they're at 1,000 yards mark.
Well, the way it's been going the last couple of games, the last 4 games they've been at least 150 yards rushing.
Yeah,
I think they would both have to average around 60 yards a game to make it. Now, some games I think you're going to see Warren get 100, and some games it might be Harris get 100. So it's going to depend on how that works out. But it's not out of the realm of possibility because for this team, it was built to rush the football.
Yeah.
And time of possession and all these things. If they can do that with this more simplistic approach moving forward, it would put them guys in an outside chance of doing that. It's highly unlikely, but I think at least one of them will make it. But if it worked out just right, they both could.
Well, also depends on how stingy the Steelers feel like being because if they both crack 1,000, there'll be differences in how much more each player earns next year because of performance bonuses on rookie contracts.
Yeah.
So it also depends whether Omar Khan goes run it with Jalen, so it's cheaper.
Worrying about the bottom line.
I mean, I doubt that's going to deeply come into consideration. But there have been stories with plenty of NFL vets where they're like they didn't get the ball, so they didn't hit performance bonuses. That's definitely been there. So Jeremiah says Minka will get a pick 6 his first game back. Look, I think one of the things that's often underspoken about, and particularly where it would help with a player like Minka, is when you are injured on the sideline, there's a lot of players that come back and perform very well purely because they've had a chance. Not only are they hungry to get back on the field, and I don't think motivation is ever a problem for Minka, but there's also players that sit there and get a chance to actually sit back and analyze what's happening and work out what are the trends, what are teams doing, what are they not. We've seen the role that Minka's supposedly played in calling some big plays or having an influence on the plays that the Steelers have called late in games, and there have been a couple of interceptions off those. So I'm really excited to see what Minka does do coming back. Shannon, do you think they'll work him in, or do you think he's out there playing 100% of what he'd usually play?
Well, based on his usage at practice, I think he's back. I think he'll be just back in his role. But I want to express this, which we talked about our concerns before the season, when they decided not to try to retain Terrell Edmunds. Terrell Edmunds was the junkyard dog. Mm-hmm. He was in there doing whatever was needed, no complaints. He could play, like an undersized off-ball linebacker. He was a safety. He was your tight end coverage specialist. He was the guy who used his speed to run down mistakes when guys missed tackles. Well, guess who's doing that this year? Minka Fitzpatrick. So you took one of your highest top 3 paid players, an all-pro, and you're asking him to be your do-it-all guy and to replace what you lost with Terrell Edmunds. That's why you're seeing the interception opportunities come to Kazee, come to Thompson, come to whoever. I think that Fitzpatrick's going to be right back in there. He'll be in the box a lot, trying to, because Neal's out as far as I know. Still.
Yeah, he's still out. I think he's got one more week technically with the whole 4-week rule as well.
Yeah, so you're going to have Fitzpatrick trying to cover that. And because Fitzpatrick is a selfless guy, he'll do whatever he's asked to do. But they're wasting his ball hawking ability. So this offseason, they have got to address that safety position.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you.
The best quality of Minka Fitzpatrick.
Well, so that's what I want to ask you, because I'm a big believer, particularly if you're going to play 3-4, and I believe in the way that the tight ends are so important in the AFC particularly, but important in the game today. Like if you've got a good tight end, the way you can dominate another team, if you've got a receiving tight end. We saw it from Pat this week, right? You see it from Mark Andrews. You see it from Kelsey. You'd see it more from the Bills if they actually use Dawson Knox properly. You see it when Miami properly used Gesicki, right? Like the tight end is such a difference maker in this game, and I think it's a very underrated position, which is why I hope they really do pay Pat whatever he wants to keep him in Pittsburgh. But so I do believe in the strong safety being so important, given that role with the tight ends. But I also wonder, and I want to ask you, do you think the Steelers, because obviously there's the school of thought that you have the deeper safety or the classic free safety, and then you've got your strong safety. But then there are other teams in the league that are moving to, they have a left and right safety, and they interchange those guys, and one of those safeties can come into the slot, etc. Do you think the Steelers, because Minka's I think Minka's like 207 pound roughly. He's like 6'1" and a bit. Now, obviously, like a proper strong safety, you want to see that guy at anywhere from 212 to in the 220s. Do you think the Steelers might consider moving to a left and right safety that they'll still move them schematically up or down? Or do you think we're going to still see this classic free safety, which should be an ideally Minka Fitzpatrick, and then you see the more classic strong safety?
Well, when the trade deadline was coming up, we talked a lot, and I wrote a lot in my articles about wanting to see the Steelers get target 2 things: another press cover capable cornerback to pair with Joey Porter Jr.
Yep.
The other thing was actually a strong safety.
Yeah.
Or because, they was talking Simmons from Denver might be available. Now, Simmons is not a classic strong safety, but he's like Fitzpatrick in that he's tall and can do either position. And I even wrote about it then that they could have just a player capable of either, have two of them in the back end. And I was really excited to see if a guy like Simmons or Bates or one of them guys, Bates was in the offseason, of course, as a free agent. I was anxious to see if a guy like that was available because you can definitely do that. And you
that's why
you have the best of both worlds if you can.
Because the player, and Tomlin's called him out before when they've played them. Like the player that I wondered that they might go after, I think he ended up with the Bills, was Taylor Rapp, who previously played at Los Angeles Rams. I think his athleticism and his size, I think he's 2'8", 209 pound, but he plays a bit more like he's like 215, 220. And I know we're only talking 10, 15 pound, but when that's pure muscle, when you're talking about athletes like this, that's actually a bit of a difference.
It makes a difference, yes.
And that, I just wonder, because I feel like with the amount of sub package that's played now, and I think about the fact that they're going to have Neal on the roster next year anyway, do they have this advantage where they can upgrade in the size and athleticism of the safeties? I think Kazee's still got another year off, another year next year. But I just wonder, with having not really had the classic Terrell Edmonds type and Neal missing so much time this year, I just wonder if this Steelers team, and you think about Terrell Austin as a DB's coach, you just kind of wonder if they're slowly just, floating in the direction of a left and right safety rather than the classic difference between a free safety and strong safety, regardless of what those actual guys they've got are capable of doing. It's just something I've been pondering for a little while.
Yeah, I would be real interested to see what direction they do go. We're seeing a change in the cornerback position, that they are going for longer, lanky guys with at least average to above average speed. And Darius Rush is a guy I'm real anxious to see more of, because I believe that if you can have Joey Porter Jr. and Rush and Corey Trice, hopefully he can come back with two completely repaired and healed knees and see what he can do, because he looked good in camp before he got injured. The Steelers are addressing the Mighty Mites situation that they used to have out at the cornerback position. And the safeties, Thompson might stick around past this year because he had a good camp and he almost made the team, and he's showed a lot when he's had to fill in for Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And I like Elijah Riley.
I was about to say, because those two guys, it's funny, you've seen Elijah Riley a little bit less, but you've seen Thompson more. I know they do different things, but yeah.
Well, Elijah Riley is versatile. He can play slot. And he is got really good closing speed. The last few weeks you've seen, like Sunday, you see Nick Herbig when he closed on that stack.
Terrific.
He covered 20 yards in a hiccup.
Yeah.
He was on Brownie. Brownie didn't even have a chance. And, that's something that the Steelers need more of right now.
Yeah.
Is because you got Watt, Highsmith ain't as explosive, but you get Herbig out there too, and you get a healthy Minka. Michael Walker. These guys all got closing speed, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Looking back to the offense, and of course, live chat, kick out with any questions too. We'll probably go the tops of the hour. But on the offensive side, I felt the Steelers left plenty of points on the board last week. I did. They that should have been a 30 plus win game, not even a question. Now, I asked a question, funnily enough, on Arthur Moats and Deke show a week and a bit ago, where I said, "What would you rather, 400 plus yards or 25 plus points?" And they kind of went, "Oh no, the points every time." And then you sort of saw them scale back and go, "Well, the yard," and they were sort of like, "You can have a yard and that heaps of yards and lose." But then they were kind of like, "Well, if you get the yards, you probably get the points." Now we saw the yards, we didn't see the points, but I felt like we did see the points from the pure fact that the Steelers left points on the board. You fumble in the red zone, for example, you miss a couple of key throws, you commit a foul, and you don't make it and get the first down. And the Steelers' third down percentage was a lot better this week with 47% at 8 out of 17 attempts. Do you think that there is really more points in this team down the stretch? Do you think over these next 6 games they're capable of averaging, let's say, 25 points a game? Or do you think it's still going to be a case of, for Tomlin, it's like, just win the game, whatever happens, happens kind of thing?
No, I think there's more points to be had. For years now, the offensive line has not been able to oppose their will.
Yes.
They got no push at the goal line. They got stalemated if they didn't get pushed back. Because Pouncey towards the end, he struggled with power, especially size right over him.
Yeah.
And Cole does as well. But now this year, you're seeing the Steelers are being able to impose their will and get a good push, and they're scoring rushing touchdowns. Now, the passing touchdowns have not been there. But part of it was because of how conservative that Mike Tomlin wanted the offense to be. So Canada called it that way. Pickett, that was always on his mind. Protect the ball, protect the ball. And you could tell in his throws. Either his guy got a chance at it or nobody got a chance at it.
Yeah.
So now I think we're going to see a more aggressive, like it's great to be aggressive from the 15. Don't wait till you're at the 5 and you have even less room. From the 15 to be aggressive and go for the end zone. Yeah. And I think we're going to see that now, especially if they're going to use the middle of the field.
Yeah.
And they got so many weapons, man. He was size.
Well, but I remember the Pickens.
All these huge guys, and they don't try to. Pickens, he loves to go up for the ball. But
I remember that Pickens TD last year against the Bengals, right?
Yeah.
Where he went straight down the inside. And you're like, and he did it actually. He scored a similar one against the Raiders a couple of weeks later. But like, I'm just like, where's that play? Where's that vertical through the middle? Like, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I think I would love to see them moving Pickens around a lot more. One of the guys that regularly is in our show and comments on it, RB. He and I were having some comments the other day about getting DJ even working in the slot a bit more, just to get him, making some sort of difference. That's the thing that I am really excited to see now is what does this middle of the field look like? And because it's kind of that funny thing where we've been passing it to the outside or been passing it behind the line of scrimmage or, passing it really short, toward the flats, but, and had problems in doing so. As soon as we open up that center of the field, we're going to see things like little cuts outside down the flat for Connor Hayward. We're going to see Darnell Washington suddenly open up. The person that I think could be hugely beneficial for this Steelers offense is Allen Robinson. As soon as we start improving the center of the field deep, you're going to see Allen Robinson do things between the 10 and 20 yard line that I think Steelers fans and other NFL fans probably forgotten he's even capable of, to be honest. Yeah. So, it's funny. I mean, I'm hopeful for those points too. Obviously, we want the wins, but and it's going to be hard too. Like the Steelers have got to go, obviously, play the Ravens, away in the final week of the season. We know how cold and wet and dark and dingy those games can be. They've got to go across and play the Seahawks, the week before that. Like that's not necessarily going to be, the best, weather or that, or place to play.
Yeah, also cold, dark, dreary, depressing.
Which is kind of, but that's why it's so good that the run games emerged, because this was the big fact. This is what cost Aaron Rodgers, I think, one of the reasons why the Green Bay Packers had problems in his last few years in Green Bay is that they didn't have a running back that could play the cold weather Wisconsin football at home in the playoffs. Like they had playoff home field advantage a lot of the time. They didn't have a running back that could run the game down. It was ludicrous. It's like, sorry, what? Do you know where your home ground is? Ridiculous. But I guess going down the stretch, which is really where I want to focus all the show and what it takes to make a playoff push, I want to ask 2 key questions. Number one is, who's a player that Steelers fans should be looking out for because their performance, while unsung, might go a long way to how the Steelers go down the stretch and into the playoffs? And 2, how are you feeling right now about the Steelers playoff potential.
Yeah, I believe it's really going to come down to Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
The reason why is, as I've said before, the main objective is the Steelers have got to figure out what they have in Kenny Pickett. Pickett, every time he's had the chance since the Miami game in his rookie year, in the fourth quarter, he's come through. Now, of course, he wasn't able to at the end of the game against Cleveland. But again, those last 3 pass plays were ridiculous. And especially where his confidence and his execution was at that point, that was just like, they give up. So I believe that because of these positive changes and what we're going to see, the growth these next few weeks, if he progresses, as I believe he will, he's going to surprise a lot of people. He's going to solidify his claim to be considered the number 1 quarterback going into next season. Because if he is the answer, he doesn't have to be a franchise guy.
That's what I keep saying to people.
He has to be your franchise guy.
And from the perspective of two.
When did they ever say that Ben was a top 5 quarterback?
But do we want them to be? Because
no, that's just it. If he doesn't, you don't have to pay him like
that's what I've been saying all season, right? Like, we don't want a quarterback that's more than $60 million a year. We don't want
spread the money around to the rest of the team. Keep the talent around him.
Yes.
What matters is he a winner? Is he clutch? Is he good leadership? All these things. And how does the offense, does he lead this offense, score enough points, all these things? So, because the Steelers got some tough decisions on some of these contracts coming up. And Hayward's the next one, the big one. They're going to have to decide in the offseason. So, everybody
I'd rather them move on from Okorafor and Deontay and keep Hayward, but that's just
I agree totally. Yeah. Deontay's got to go. Yeah. I want Deontay Johnson to close out this season with 100-yard games, score a touchdown every game. Because when it comes time at the end of the year to trade him, I want his value at its highest.
Well, particularly because he's only going to cost. I did a show 2 days ago on it for the channel, which everyone can invite you to go back and listen to it. But he's only going to cost a team $10 million, and the Steelers will eat $5.8 million of that. That is going to be cheap. So I agree with you. If he can score 3 or 4 touchdowns, look like he's having more fun in the team, do things like jump. If they could fumble again and he could be the first one that jumps on it, that would be really good.
Because I want his value as high as it can be.
Yeah, agree.
Because it would be good for him to go elsewhere and for the Steelers. Because to me, he's never fit the standard for a Steeler wide receiver. And I wrote about it recently, and I'm going to stick by it. But now, as far as how do I feel about the rest of the season, I mean, the Steelers' record, their schedule, there's no such thing as an easy game for this team.
No.
Because you never know. If, like the Patriots, Belichick comes up with a tough defensive game plan, the offense struggles, it could be a 1-score game at the end.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're going to move past that. But, we don't know till we see it, right?
Yeah,
but
100%.
I believe that this team, based on the schedule, based on the fact that they finally did something so out of character that they moved on from a coach in season.
Yeah.
That there's a renewed focus and the players are inspired. I believe that they will make the playoffs, and what they do once they get there is going to say a lot about what they need to look at this offseason. Is it an offseason you need to fill 2 or 3 positions to take the next step, or is it you still got another full season of rebuild?
Do you think that Terrell Austin earns a new contract?
I don't want to put all the blame on him. I like an aggressive defensive coach.
Yeah.
I do not like the soft zone.
Yeah.
In the past, because I know Brian Flores don't want to play soft zone when he was there.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have the cornerbacks to play coverage. not true press men.
Yeah, 100%.
This year they got Joey Porter Jr., but it's irritating me that they're not at least giving Darius Rush 5-10 snaps a game in press. What is it going to hurt? You have safety coverage over the top. He cannot be worse than Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace leaves guys wide open because he can't run with anybody.
That's why I'm shocked they haven't moved Levi to the slot. I actually think like if you're playing in your own half, I think you can scheme Levi enough to make a positivity in the slot. But that's
you could use him, but you have to use him selectively.
That's what I mean. Yeah, certain downs, certain
selective.
situations.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to see what is the reason that Austin isn't being more aggressive is because, Tomlin has his hand in the defense a lot.
Oh, 100%.
So is this Tomlin or is this Austin? Because if you look at the results, they're fourth in the league or third in points given up?
Yeah.
Per game average. They're not giving up points. That's great. And they're getting turnovers, and that's great. But they're also giving up way too many third and long conversions.
Well, that was one of the things that at least was better this week. It was they gave up a 3rd and 9, which was a 16-yard pass to Andre Savas. Oh, I can never say his last name.
Is that where they missed the sack?
Yeah, and then they gave up I had all my notes. I literally had them next to my Steelers computer that I've got, and I literally threw them out yesterday. But I think the other one was a 3rd and 7. One was 3rd and 7. That's my eidetic memory coming into play there. Yeah, it's just I don't know. Like I said it all last year that Terrell Austin was lucky that Matt Canada was around because he was sort of like he was getting away with a sneaky crime. I called it last year, where he was like this smooth criminal, where he got away with all this, or poor play. It's hard because, as you say, they're doing really well from a turnover perspective. They still get the sacks. I just think that if Austin didn't have the quality, I mean, you can say this about any coach, though. If they don't have the quality of players or coordinator, if they don't have the quality of players, they wouldn't be where they are. I just don't have the confidence in Austin that I have had with other previous DCs for the Steelers. That's just how it feels, right? Do you think? I guess to wrap it up as well. And Blue Nose, that's going to be an awesome setup with Trice, Rush, and Porter. And they'll probably get a guy in the 3rd or the 4th round that's had an injury or played for a smaller school. They'll go out and get another 6'3" alien, cornerback. But what about, so I guess to round out the show and have any more questions, but Coach Sullivan, you've got OC Faulkner. Do you think these guys are playing for some level of they're going to be the guys leading the offense next year? Or do you think the Steelers will definitely bring someone in and go with a bit of a philosophy? Because I'd also hate to lose Faulkner because he's not promoted. I think Sully, is what it is, especially at his age. But I'd hate to lose someone like Faulkner purely because he doesn't get that OC job.
Yeah, if you listen to the players, that tells you so much. They all speak so highly of Faulkner. Now, I thought the way that all the coaches handled the Canada situation was top shelf, first class.
Totally.
Because it is a man's livelihood. It's his job. He's got a family. He's a human being, and he has feelings. And I know I've been hard on him, but I'm just saying that he was promoted above his abilities.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
think
sure
he
he'll be
ever
a
had
fine
an NFL
college
resume.
And I'm sure he'll go back to college football in the next 12 months.
He'll never
do
be
really
an
well.
NFL,
And he'll do really well.
Yeah. But Faulkner is a guy that they have to make a decision on. Do they want to lose him? But I believe that the Steelers, if they're going to maximize their championship capabilities and chances, they're going to have to go outside the organization.
Yeah.
And bring in a guy who can get the best out of Kenny Pickett. If he shows that he's that guy the rest of the season, because we know about the intangibles, then you want to bring out his full capabilities. They'll need to go outside of the organization, whether they lose Faulkner or not.
Yeah. Do you think they go to someone do you think Tomlin will stay in the family and go to someone like a Byron Leftwich, or do you think they'll cast a really wide net and be really open to who they bring in, because there are definitely some names that are bandied around as up and comers quarterback coaches as well.
I love Byron Leftwich. I loved him as a player. Yeah. He played at Marshall here in West Virginia. But I don't want Byron Leftwich. And the reason why is, what did he accomplish without Tom Brady?
Agree. That's my biggest thing.
Now, with Tom Brady, you don't need an offensive coordinator. It's like with Ben. Ben was the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's why we had Randy.
Everybody talks about Haley and Bruce Arians, and they argue. Ben was his own offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Ben's play was, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to play backyard football. I'm going to do things that nobody else could do. I'll make a big play, and then y'all can stand over here and have the people say, boy, that's a great call by Haley, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, Ben even said that. Ben said that on Football.
If you want to keep somebody in-house, or somebody from the family, Hines Ward would be a great wide receivers coach. There's guys like that you can keep it in. But when it comes to this offensive coordinator, it can't be a yes man.
No, you and I talked about that for a long time.
Yeah, it can't be a Tomlin buddy. Yeah. It has to be somebody that, Tomlin's going to have to respect, keep his hands out of the pie, and let this guy lead this offense.
Would you prefer someone from the McVay side of things or Shanahan side of things?
To me, Shanahan is the more consistent across the board.
Yeah.
McVay is kind of hit or miss. His disciples. That Shanahan is incredible. When you look at the guys they had on one coaching staff.
Yeah.
And they're all offensive geniuses.
Yeah.
And, the thing when the NFL is so competitive and there's so much parity and the players are also equally, talent-wise, a coach that can scheme guys open and devise high-scoring offenses just by creating mismatches is invaluable. And the Steelers haven't had that in a long time.
No, I completely agree with you there. Without a doubt. Well, look, that was an awesome first episode of The Global Perspective on Steelers Touchdown Under. I always love doing a show, and that's what we want to do. Wanted to bring this to you guys. You guys love it as well. Seen that in that live chat. If you're catching this show or this channel for the first time and you liked it, hit that like button. Comment in the comments. If you're watching a lot of Steelers Touchdown Under, or this is even your first video, like what you saw, hit that sub button as well. We're on a hard drive. We want to hit over 500 to close out the season, if not 1,000 subs as we head into next year as well. The Steelers team are winning games. The Steelers team are headed for a playoff push. I would like to thank my man here, Shannon White, for joining us on the channel. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of the Steelers Global Perspective, mate. But as always, we will say, go Steelers, and everyone enjoy your weekends.